So all the black bands came out of Garfield High School. Quincy Jones went to Garfield, Jimi Hendrix went to Garfield, and so did Bruce Lee. So Garfield had a great music program.
Philip, I want to thank you for taking this time to come here this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I've heard a lot about you. I've watched one of your events. It was you do a birthday party every year.
Yes.
Right. And this was close by my home. It was in Megadon. And you put on an event. I mean, your music was really good. I mean, you're a keyboardist and you had singers there, but I knew that you were the one that organized everything.
That's right.
It was all your event. You do this every year. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing the birthday shows for about 20 years. Maybe, yeah, about 20 years.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Were you born in, did you grow up there?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So, I'm fifth generation Chinese.
Okay.
And part Native American. And
well, how fifth generation? So that means in the beginning, someone married an Indian. The Chinese came
yes,
over.
yeah.
So how did that go?
My great-great-grandfather was reportedly the first Chinese person in Seattle.
Okay.
And he married the daughter of Chief Seattle.
So you guys went back. Somebody did.
We go back to the 1860s.
You went back to 1860s
in Seattle. Yeah.
Okay. Do you know where in China he was from? Did you find out?
It's Toisan.
Where's that?
It's Kwangtung, which is off on the mainland, close to Hong Kong.
Okay.
And that is Canton. So the big city there is Shenzhen.
Shenzhen.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you know he came from there.
Yeah, most of the early Chinese settlers who came to America are from that area.
Okay.
So most of the railroad workers and
that's what I was going to say.
workers.
I was going to ask because he started working on the railroad, right?
Yeah, he was a labor contractor.
Okay.
And so he would contract workers and send them off to work in teams.
Mm-hmm. But when he came over, then he found this beautiful Indian he liked, and he married an Indian.
That's right.
Okay.
Well, he had a bunch of wives because, back then, wealthy Chinese could have as many wives as they wanted.
Oh, so he was wealthy. Being a contractor, I guess he was, yes.
Yeah. So he started the business and became wealthy, and he had shops and he built hotels and stuff like that in Chinatown, Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so then from that point, is this your mother's side or your father's side?
My mother's side.
Your mother's side?
My father's side is I'm third generation.
Okay, right. So you grew up in Seattle until when? How old were you?
I left Seattle after high school when I was 19.
Okay. Did you travel a lot when you were young? Did your parents take you travel?
No, when I left Seattle at age 19, that was the first time I had ever flown. Yeah.
You turned 66 this year or next?
Yeah, just last month.
Just last month. So October I turned 70. So that makes me 4 years older than you, right? 4 years older. So when you grew up, do you have brothers and sisters?
Yes, I'm the youngest of 5. And
so what is it, girl, boy, what is it?
Yeah, girl's the oldest, and then I have 3 older brothers.
And then you?
I'm the youngest.
Of 4. Are you guys close?
Yes, very close.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So all of them are doing okay?
Yes. My sister just passed about 6 months ago. She's the oldest. Okay. And she was also a musician. She was a pianist and keyboardist.
What about your mother and father? How are they doing?
My mother passed away when I was 13. And then my father passed away when he was 83, 10 years ago.
10 years ago?
Yeah.
What did your father do when you moved?
My father was an architect, and my mother was a housewife, but she was also a pianist.
Okay. So is that where your music came from?
Yeah. My sister and I got the music DNA, and then the other brothers got the construction, architecture. So they can build drywall and remodel bathrooms and
so
stuff.
all 3 of them?
They can all do some sort of construction.
Do they work together?
The two, my next oldest brother and my oldest brother are filmmakers, and they had a company called Wu Art International in New York. They filmed a lot of the early MTV videos. So they did Pearl Jam, Public Enemy, Living Color, Tribe Called Quest, Stevie Ray Vaughan. So
those are your brothers. The two of them got together.
Two of them got together, and
was that the second, the two above you, or was that the one after your sister?
It's the one above me and the oldest brother, and the middle brother is retired, but he spent his life in the fashion industry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's retired now. Are the other two brothers, your oldest and the next one to you, are they still working together?
They split up, but the oldest brother is the president of Asian Cinevision. Okay. It's a nonprofit that supports independent Asian American films. Mm-hmm. And then the next brother up, he just retired, but he started his own business, and he traveled the world making films for 40 years.
Right. And the other one that's in the fashion, you said he retired, so
yeah.
Do all of them have kids? Have you
yes.
You've been made an uncle several times.
Two of them have adopted children, and then the oldest brother has two daughters, and they're both married.
Okay. So tell me, when you were growing up, were you guys close as kids? I mean...
Yeah, we're very close.
Is that right?
Yeah, so the next brother up, we went to school together from my age 3 until age 19. So we were together every day.
How many years between you two?
2.
What about you and your sister, the oldest sister that just passed? How many years between you and her?
6.
Oh, so there were 5 kids.
Yeah.
In 6 years.
Yeah, everybody's a year apart except for me and my next brother.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Wow.
Yeah, very close.
So your family was known in Seattle. They knew everyone knew the rules.
My father was a community activist, and so he was very well known. He single-handedly raised money to open a nursing home for Chinese-speaking elderly, and then he rehabilitated a few hotels in Chinatown and provided low-income housing for elderly Asians, not just Chinese, but Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese.
Well, because you were the youngest of 5, you were the youngest of 5, you were well protected, so you didn't have to worry too much about school or anything else, did you?
We lived in kind of a dangerous neighborhood.
Right.
It was called the Central District of Seattle, and it's predominantly black neighborhood. And so we pretty much fighting and getting beat up all the time.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Even as a kid? So didn't your brothers come to your aid a lot?
They weren't always around. And then, we were outnumbered. But in the end, we got our way. We moved out of the Central District and into the more Asian neighborhood.
Right, because I'm sure segregated. Self-segregation, but segregated. Yes.
So once my brother and I changed high schools, then we had our own gang.
You had your own gang?
The Asian gang. And everybody was into karate and kung fu back then. So we finally got some backup.
You had some backup.
Yeah.
So up until what? So junior high school, your elementary school, junior high school, you guys were the minority in a black school?
Yes. My junior high school was 85% black. And my first high school was 80% black. And then when we moved high schools, that school was 35% Asian.
Wow.
And
so you had a big group.
And 35% black, and then the rest of
other people.
Yeah.
My goodness. So people really don't understand how you grew up. They can't imagine.
No, a lot of people look at my exterior and they would never guess.
They could never assume that all of your emotional time, they say that's from birth to age 12, was built up actually in a black community.
Yes.
So it's like, but you were a minority in a minority.
That's right.
which is even harder.
Yeah. So my father was active in Chinatown,
Mm-hmm.
and so we kind of lived like cultural chameleons.
Right.
So we had our Chinese friends and our activities that we would do. Chinese New Year's, the dragon, the lion dance, you know. So the dragon, you have to hold up a section of it and run around in zigzag.
Right.
And then the lion dance, I was the tail. So lion dance is a two-man team.
Right. Okay.
And then the guy who carries the head, he has to be really strong.
Right.
Because the head is heavy.
Right.
The tail, you just get under that cloth, you know,
Right.
and you just dance around, try to match the steps of the guy in front of you.
How old were you when you started doing that?
About 12.
12.
Yeah.
Did you like it? Were you happy that you got to do it?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was fun, and we had firecrackers, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But
So,
then again, so you, like you said, you had to be a chameleon. So when you were in school, you just what was your what was your idea? So you're going to schools all black. Of course, you're not afraid, or maybe you were. Do you feel like you stayed in constant fear?
it wasn't. There were a few bullies, like there are everywhere, you know. But I had plenty of friends of all colors.
Mm-hmm.
And going to a multicultural school was very enlightening, because my neighborhood, there were a lot of artists and musicians in the neighborhood. And so a lot of the local musicians and artists, their children I grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a very interesting place to grow up.
Okay, so let's start elementary school. In elementary school, what did you like in elementary school?
I was always good at reading. My siblings taught me how to read when I was 3.
Okay.
So I could already read when I was 3. So I was good at writing, English, but not so good at like math
Okay.
or science.
Did you speak any Chinese in the home?
No, my oldest siblings went to Chinese school and lasted less than a week. Yeah.
So your parents wouldn't speak to you in Chinese at all?
No, they used it as a secret language. So
Whenever they would-
when they didn't want us to understand what they're talking about.
So you never learned Chinese?
I can curse and order food. So, and I learned that in high school. When we moved to the Asian high school, then we made a lot of friends,
Right.
and those kids, some of them could speak Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
So first thing they taught me how to do is curse,
Right. Okay.
and you know, and then we were always playing hooky and going to Chinatown to eat.
Right.
Yeah, so
But there's 2 groups now in Asia. I mean, in California, on the West Coast, the 2 biggest groups would be Chinese and Japanese.
that's right.
But you didn't mix.
Oh, we did.
You did?
Yeah,
So that was cool. As long as you were Asian, that was good.
yeah.
Okay, what about the Filipino kids?
We would mix.
They would?
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause-
Each race had their own little organizations.
Right.
You know, the Filipino Youth Organization, and every year there would be a parade. It was called Sea Fair,
Okay.
and so the Japanese had a drum and bugle corps, and then the Chinese had the Dragon and the Chinese girls drill team. And the Filipino Youth Organization had kind of a drill team too that would march.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we got to know the kids who went to school together on the south end where the Asians lived.
Okay. Right.
And so it wasn't, everybody was kind of like into music.
They were?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, you know, going to dances.
Right.
Going to see bands.
Right,
There were a lot of local bands, like a roller skating rink.
That's
and
right. That
stuff
was
like
big.
that.
That's
yeah,
right.
yeah. So you know, the groups would mix.
Right.
The
Okay.
the different Asian groups would mix. It wasn't like here in Asia.
Right.
Yeah, they
It was,
don't.
it was
Yeah.
very clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had a lot of black friends too, obviously,
I did.
and especially because you're getting into music, and you can't be in music and not know black people.
Well,
You
my
can.
neighborhood had a lot of bands.
Okay.
And
Now this is after you moved to the final high school, or are you talking about?
No,
before?
this is when I was still a kid.
Still a kid, okay.
Yeah, and so all the black bands came out of Garfield High School. Quincy Jones went to Garfield, Jimi Hendrix went to Garfield, and so did Bruce Lee. So Garfield had a great music program, a great big band, and a lot of local bands formed because there was a big club scene in Seattle. Ray Charles and Quincy Jones were hanging out together. They played together, and they met each other when they were like 16 or 17 with Clark Terry, and they worked all those clubs. There's a book called Jackson Street After Dark that chronicles the history of jazz in Seattle. So there were clubs all up and down the strip, and Chinatown was next to the black community. The black musicians who came, who toured, couldn't stay in the hotels downtown, and so they stayed in the Chinese hotels. They stayed in Chinatown, and there were jazz clubs in Chinatown too. So during Prohibition, there was a lot of speakeasies, and Seattle was known as a wide open town. That Vice was pretty free. Subsequently, there was work for bands, and the bands used to work 5 nights a week. I started doing that when I was in high school. I was in the big band. When I moved to the next high school, their big band was #1 in the nation, and they recruited me into the big band. And the first chair sax player was Kenny G. And so
that's in your band.
This is in the school band.
In the school band,
the big band, yeah.
So Kenny G went to the school you went to.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was after we moved to the Asian.
The Asian one. That was the next. So you went to that school.
Yeah.
Right.
So that school was a lot more easygoing than Garfield.
Sure,
yeah, Garfield was kind of wild.
Right. Okay.
During my early years, I used to hang out with the hippies because that was in like 1968. I was 12 years old.
Right.
And so the music, it was in full swing. So I went to see quite a lot of bands. Like my sister, when I was 12, she took me to the local hippie concert hall and to see Paul Butterfield Blues Band. And that's when I picked up the harmonica, when I saw that.
What instruments can you play? Or do you play? Go ahead, run them all.
Mainly keyboards, and my second instrument is harmonica. But I can play guitar and a little drums and a little bass. I started playing flute for a while, and I had some congas and percussion. But I pretty much zeroed in on the keyboards.
Right, that's your favorite.
Yeah.
So you love the keyboard, and you play any style of keyboard.
Jazz is not my strongest point. What's your
strongest?
Funk and soul music. Yeah, so that was my roots. And when I first got into my first bands, that's what we were playing. We were playing funk and soul.
How old were you when you got in your first band?
12.
Now the members, were they mostly Asian?
No, they were hippie guys.
Hippie guys?
White guys. And
they were playing funk?
Actually, the first music I was playing was blues.
And this is why you went to Garfield?
No, this is when I was in junior high school.
Junior high school, but that's still in the predominantly black community, right?
Yeah, and I knew many black musicians as well, and who were members of some of the local bands. But the guys I started playing with, the art teacher at the junior high school had a son, and he played all the instruments.
But he didn't go to that school?
He did.
And he's white?
Yeah. So, I mean...
So how many white kids did you have in your first school? Because it
was about, 20% white.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So all the kids you played from the band with went to the school you went to? Your first band?
Yeah.
Okay. They just happened to be the white kids in that school?
Yeah. So we, it was kind of a garage band, and we would just play blues and stuff by Cream or Santana, stuff like that.
Santana, right.
Yeah. And then by the time I turned 14, I started playing a little jazz.
Now, did you play with these guys for 2 years?
Yes, I did.
Did you guys ever play any gigs, like some of the school dances or anything like that?
The art teacher used to throw parties, like massive parties, hippie parties. And there would be bands. Back then at a party, there would be a band.
Okay.
And then either I would sit in with the band, and then my first gig was at the art teacher's house with her son for one of her parties.
Okay.
That was my first gig when
And
I
you
was
played
14.
what?
I played piano.
And weren't you were you nervous?
No.
Why weren't you nervous?
It was a party, you know. It was a party, and people were always playing at parties.
Okay.
You know, people would gather around a piano, or there would be a band.
Right.
You know, and I would sit in with the band on organ or piano or harmonica.
Okay.
When I was 12, 13, 14.
Okay.
And then when I was 15, that's when we moved to down to the Asian part of town.
Mm-hmm.
And then I joined a black band.
All right.
With guys from school. So my second gig was at a talent show. We rehearsed to go to a talent show. We drove all the way across Washington State to Walla Walla to play at a church talent show.
Well, there must have been something you won if you won the talent show. Was there money involved?
Yeah.
There had to be something, because you
Yeah,
had to drive that far just to play in a talent show.
Yeah.
Okay.
I forgot what it was.
But there was something involved.
Yeah.
And you guys went there. Did you win?
No, we didn't win.
What place did you come in?
We came in second place. Yeah. But the guys who won, they were kids, right? And they were playing Shaft, the theme from Shaft.
And they were good?
Yeah. And they weren't so good, but the cuteness.
The cuteness.
Yeah,
Okay, that's
so that's what made them win.
So you guys should have won. I mean, you would have won had it been equal.
Yeah, well,
If there's no cute factor.
we had actually, you know, an adult in the band, and then we were high school kids.
So it made a big difference.
Yeah, so I think they didn't want to give it to the grown, you know, adult versus the kids.
Little kids who
yeah,
just
little
did
high
their
school,
best,
you
right?
know, junior high school kids playing Shaft.
Yeah.
But,
So what
but
did you
it-
guys play anyway? What did you guys play?
we were playing songs by War
Okay.
and Dyke and the Blazers, you know,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then going from there, so then you did that.
So after that, I joined the high school. We formed a jazz combo, and the arranger at the high school was kind of a Quincy Jones kind of guy. He would make these big band arrangements, and he formed a small band, and we were doing kind of like CTI jazz, like Red Clay, Herbie Hancock stuff,
Okay,
funk, like jazz funk. So we played at the NAMM show in Portland. I met the inventor of the Fender Rhodes, Harold Rhodes. He let me try out his new piano. So that was a great experience. He wrote a letter to Berklee College of Music recommending that they give me a scholarship. But,
just from that time, just from that.
That was when I was 15, and but I didn't get the scholarship.
Okay.
So at the end of that year, when I was 15, I got drafted into the big band, and at that time, the Franklin High School big band was #1 in the nation for these high school big band competitions. And so I got into that for a while. I formed a little jazz group with Kenny G and another sax player and the guys in the big band.
Wait, you formed it?
Yeah.
So how'd you talk to me with the process of doing that?
I had like this idea. I wanted to do kind of like the Crusaders or Grover Washington kind of, you know, fusion kind of band. And these guys were good at playing kind of jazz funk. We formed this little band. It's called Energy, and we used to steal the PA from the high school. So one of the sax players his father was a gardener, and he would pull the gardening truck up to the back door of the school, And we'd run in there and grab the PA and throw it in the gardening truck. And then we did some gigs on the weekends. Then the band leader found out. He made everybody like give back the money.
That you made as a result of that?
Yeah, and then I said, no, I'm not giving back the money because I earned it, you know. So I quit. I quit the big band. And right at that time, I was recruited into a professional band. Mm-hmm. And then I started playing 5 nights a week in clubs.
Now, how old were you now? How old are you now?
16.
16, okay.
Yeah. When I graduated high school, I went to Seattle Community College. I started taking music theory, and that was the first music lessons I'd ever taken. So I learned by ear. By ear.
Right.
And then I didn't start reading music until college, mm-hmm. because when they recruited me in the big band, they never like taught me anything, but I could already play. So they would just, you know, they needed me because I was the best pianist in the school. They didn't teach me anything. They would just
let you do
play.
What you do.
Yeah.
This is what's good. Melody's going to be.
And because I was the star player in the big band, I was able to get like 4 music classes a day, and then I never showed up for any of them, but I would still get A's. Pretty much in high school, me and my friends, we were never in school. We would go to school as a meetup point, and then leave, and then I'd come back.
Your parents didn't know this.
I'd come back to school, a couple classes, you know, the ones that I liked. I'd come after school for big band practice, because big band was not a class. Mm-hmm. It was just an activity.
I think something a lot of people won't know, younger people won't understand how open our school campuses were during that time. They weren't closed. There may be one auditorium door would be closed, but basically you could get in and out of the schools very easily.
We could roam in and out of the music rooms freely and practice when we wanted to. We could go into the auditorium. The auditorium was always open in there, and there was a piano in there. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty loose.
That's right. And
I actually graduated without passing math. I think they just go, okay, just get out of here. And when I got to college, in first day of school, in my music theory class, there was a guitarist from a popular band, and they had just broken up. He heard me playing. He said, "We want to recruit you into our band." And these guys were like adults. They were 24, I was 19. And they said, "Okay, we want Kenny G. We want you, Kenny G, and the drummer, who was the MVP." This guy played like Billy Cobham when he was in high school. Mm-hmm. And so we reformed this band, and it was called Cold, Bold, and Together.
What was the ethnicity of the group?
It was all black except for me and Kenny. And they had records out. And so we started making...
What was the name of the group when they had records out?
Cold, Bold, and Together.
Oh, so it's continued to be that name?
Yeah.
You were together.
Yeah, so we formed a new Cold, Bold, and Together, and it was like a super group. Because Kenny was like, you know, he was so...
Nobody knew Kenny G at the time.
They knew him as the star player of the Franklin High School jazz band.
But I mean, the world did not know Kenny G yet.
No. So we became little superstars in our hometown because we had a #1 record on the Soul Station.
Did you get paid for all this too?
Yeah. We were gigging all the time. You know, we were playing the clubs 5 nights a week. And going to college. And Kenny was going to University of Washington. And the rest of us were going to the community college.
Right.
Yeah. So something happened. I went to see Roy Ayers at the local jazz club. And he asked me if I wanted to sit in. And so I sat in with him because he had just fired his keyboard player. But he had keyboards that he was jumping back and forth from the vibes, and then he would play keyboard and sing. He said, "Hey, I know you," because I had met him a couple of years previous when he came to a little club. And I had sat in with him at that time. And he said, "Hey, I know you. You want to play?" And I was like, "Yeah." He says, "Do you know any of my music?" And I said, "I know all of your music." I did. And so, because I was a fan. So I sat in, and everything went well. And he said, well, come back tomorrow. And he kept saying, come back tomorrow, come back tomorrow. And then he said, I want you to come to rehearsal, because we rehearse every day at 4 o'clock. And I was like, and I showed up every day at 4 o'clock, and nobody ever showed up for rehearsal. They would party all night and sleep all day.
But you're the one, you're right there.
But I'm there. And then one day he said, come down and meet me at the club. And so I went there, and it was just him and I. And he said, I want you to transcribe this song for me. So it was a Gino Vanelli song. And so he played the cassette, and I picked out the chords and wrote him a chart. And I didn't know, but he was gonna record that song, and he needed someone to write him a chart. And then he said, can you swing? And I said, yeah. He said, okay, play blues in F. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I played, and he was playing vibes. And then after that, he said, can you join my band and move to New York? And I was like, yeah. when are we leaving?
No, you're still 19.
I'm still 19.
Okay.
A few days later, I go home for dinner, and my father says, oh, I spoke to Roy Ayers yesterday. And I told him, where's the contract for my son? And he said, oh, we don't do contracts. And my dad said, okay, then my son, he can't go play with you or join your band. And Roy said, okay, and he left town. And Dad, you said what? They went to LA, right? I said, wait a minute. I went to LA, and because my brother had just moved there to go to college, right? So I just showed up at my brother's house.
Your dad didn't know you left?
No, I didn't tell anybody. I just left.
Right.
And so me and my brother tracked down Roy Ayers. And Roy saw me say, hey, you gonna play? And I was like, yeah. And so I went and sat in with him at Concerts by the Sea. And then at the end of the show, I said, don't listen to my dad, okay? I'm ready to, pretty much make my own decision. He said, okay, come tomorrow night. And we're at the Starwood. And so Roger and I went, my brother Roger and I went to Starwood. And there was this young kid who was playing that night with Roy. And this guy was fantastic. And he said, how you doing? My name's Greg Fillinganes. And I was like, man, how are you so bad? He says, the Motown guys taught me. The guys who play at Motown taught me how to, because he could work the synthesizers and everything, and
so clavinet.
So
you said, how was you so bad? You mean bad in a good way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Badass.
Right. How you said badass? Yeah. Wow.
And but he was playing with Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder pulled him out of high school, and so we were exactly the same age. And so Roy wanted to steal him from Stevie, but Stevie was paying retainer. Then, so I was the standby. So after that show, he said, I'm recording, come to the studio. So Roger and I went to the studio. Roger was showing the guys how to do Kung Fu, because Roger was really my brother was a Kung Fu master. So they were playing, Ricky Lawson was playing drums, and Byron Miller was playing bass, and Ronnie Drayton was playing guitar. These guys all went on to become superstars later, but this is, we're all they're all the same age as me. They're 19, 20, and the guys kept saying, why don't you let Philip play? Why don't you let Philip play? Because I was watching, right? And so finally he said, okay. And so I went in the studio, and I ended up playing 3 songs. Those songs ended up on Everybody Loves the Sunshine. So that was my first world class recording session. And then after that, Roy said, okay, go home, I'll send you a plane ticket. Go home and wait, I'll send you a plane ticket. And then when I got home, the guys from Cold Bone Together were waiting. They all came to my house, and they're like, you can't leave. And I was like, guys, this is my opportunity, I gotta take this. He's like, no, we're gonna make it, we're gonna be the next Earth, Wind and Fire. And I was like, Sorry guys, I gotta go. And
That had to be hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
So lo and behold, the plane ticket came, and I got on my first plane ride and went to Chicago. And then the first night, first we went to the club and did our sound check rehearsal. And as I'm walking out, there's a guy at the bar, and he says, "Hey, hi, I'm Kenny Burrell." And I was like, "Man, you know, I'm a big fan of yours." He says, "Man, you're really cool. I've never seen a Chinese piano player before." We go back to the hotel, get our dinner, come back to the club, and we're playing the show, and this lady just starts wandering out on stage, right? Our roadie ran up, and he was going to grab her and throw her off the stage. And Byron said, no, that's Flora Purim. And so she sat in, and then another guy came to sit in, and he was a drummer, and his name was Steve Cobb. And like, this is a guy who played on the records with Ramsey Lewis, and later he ended up being the drummer. But at that time, Ricky had left in between the time that I went home to wait for my plane ticket, and they had another guy was playing. So Ricky, at that time, Quincy pulled him out of Roy's band to play with the brothers Johnson. And so that was the beginning of Ricky's journey, because you know Ricky played with Michael Jackson, Phil Collins, Steely Dan. Byron played with Luther Vandross, George Duke, you know, Santana, the Crusaders. So all these guys, like Roy's band was kind of like an incubator for like people who would step up to some, you know, other things. And it was for me too. And so I get off the stage, I'm all, you know, adrenaline is all high, and I go up to the dressing room. I'm the first one into the dressing room. And Donny Hathaway is sitting there. And I'm like, man, I was like, "Dear Donny Hathaway." He's like, "Is it all right if I can be in here with you all?" I was like, "Are you kidding? Dear God, you know, it's like God is here." So that was my first night on the road.
Wow.
And so everything from that point on was all like, wow, you
Just
know.
kept on coming.
Yeah.
After Chicago, tell me, when did you start traveling outside of the U.S.? How old were you when that happened?
I didn't. Roy never left the U.S. while I was with him.
How
So
long were you with him?
I was with him for 2 years.
2 years, okay.
The first time I left the U.S., I was with Patti LaBelle, and we went to Paris and London. Yeah, and that was a riot.
And from Roy Ayers, you met Patti LaBelle?
No, from Roy Ayers, I was recruited to play with Ashford and Simpson.
Okay. And then what?
And
Is that where Patti LaBelle met you?
no, Patti had seen me. We were on Soundscape together with Roy Ayers and Patti LaBelle on the same TV show. So I had met her musicians at that time. I met a drummer named Billy Johnson, and Billy was from Dexter Wansel's band, and then he was also playing with Noel Pointer, and Noel. So he would come up to New York. He was from Philadelphia. So Patti's band was Philadelphia based, and so was Dexter Wansel, Grover Washington. Patti was forming a new band, and so she hired Billy, and then the guitarist was Ron Smith, and they were looking for a keyboard player, and so Billy and Ron recommended me. So I went down to audition, and then I ended up getting the job. Actually, there's a story here. I was in LA producing my sister's band, and I was waiting to go to the first rehearsal of Patti LaBelle. And so phone call came for me, and it was Bud Ellison. He was Patti's musical director. And he said, "Yeah, what we've done is you're going to be replacing the horn section and then playing keyboards. And so we have everything written out. And I was like, I need to tell you something. I'm not a great reader. And he said, you're not a great reader? We'll hire people who can't read, you know, so forget it. And I was like, oops, okay. So I was kind of down. So I had a girlfriend in Nashville. I went to visit my girlfriend. And nobody knew where it was, right? And then finally, somebody tracked me down and said, you have to get to Philadelphia right away. Because when they heard what Bud said, they said, what? You fired him before, you know, they're like, he's the baddest keyboard player you're going to find. And so, you know, they were panicking because nobody knew where it was. So when I got there, everything was great. And I said, I'm going to have to go back to Ashford and Simpson when they do their summer tour. And so they said, okay, we'll hire somebody to sub for you while you're gone. And so they had these auditions, and Bud was crazy. And so he would have like a whole room full of keyboard players, and then they would start playing, and the first time that they made a mistake, he would stop the band and he would go, next! And he went through the whole day and didn't hire one. I think what happened is that all these guys were readers, but they had two charts. And you can't read two charts at the same time. One had the horn parts and the other had the string parts. But I learned everything by ear.
Right, so you could hear.
So, you know, because it's like a dance.
That's right.
It's a routine.
Right.
So if you're doing this, you have to feel it.
That's right.
Yeah. So that band was a riot. And so when we went to Paris, everybody was like phone pranking each other with fake French accents. And it was crazy. And we did this, we did an anniversary at a club called Le Palace, which is like the Studio 54 of Paris. And so everybody was, you know, all the elite, you know, of Paris were there. And so Patti was kind of like, she was kind of like the gay favorite artist of gay people. And so there were like transvestites and, you know, like 6 strong men all oiled up, like only wearing like, you know, thongs.
Right.
They carried this big cake out, which was a huge penis. And then they lit up this huge penis fireworks inside there. And the whole place filled up with smoke. And people were breaking their glasses, like drinking and breaking their glasses. And it was wild. So that was really fun to play with Patti, because there's always like transvestites and, you know, and like,
something interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff.
So that's your first time leaving the States, is going with Patti LaBelle and going to Paris.
Yeah.
Where was it after that? Where was the next country you went to?
We went to London, played at the Hammersmith Odeon.
Mm-hmm.
And that was great too, first time to London. Yeah, it was a grand time.
And you're probably in your 20s now?
Yeah, I was 22 at that time.
22.
Yeah.
When would you say was the time when you really hit it big? You felt like, I'm here, I made it.
Frankie Beverly and Mays featuring Frankie Beverly. So he fired like most of his band, except for the core members, and he wanted his members to come from Philadelphia because they're from Philly. All the Mays guys are from Philly. And so he cannibalized Patti LaBelle's band. So first he took the guitarist, Ron Smith, and then he took the drummer, Billy Johnson, and then they needed a keyboard player. So Billy and Ron recruited me. And then when I got there, I was like, okay, this is a whole nother level here. Everybody had Porsches, you know, everybody had new cars.
He did well. He made sure his band did well.
At that time,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We had bodyguards, we had valets, we had limos, you know, so the luxury level went way up
And
from
that's when
there.
you felt like it.
Yeah,
Well, how old were you at that time?
23.
23.
Yeah.
Did you get a Porsche?
No, I didn't. I didn't get a car. Yeah.
Okay.
So I found out later that there were different levels of pay scale,
Okay.
and I was at the bottom. The guys, the veterans, they were getting, you know,
Really big. Hey.
and but I was getting paid. So that was the pinnacle of luxury for me at that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we're going to have to do more than one podcast with you if you grant me that, because
Okay.
you have stories that I need to hear and I need to get out there. Because you've played. I would like to ask this question: who haven't you played with that you wish you'd gotten a chance to play with?
There were a couple things I got called for that I couldn't do. One was Chaka Khan, and the other one was George Duke. I wanted to play with Earth, Wind, and Fire, but that changed after they changed. Like after they kind of went through this period where I didn't dig the records anymore. That was after they had all the biggest hits, and they were starting to kind of level off and change members. But I was a big Earth, Wind, and Fire fan, huge. One dream that came true was I got called to play with Tower Power, because I used to just eat, sleep, and drink Tower Power. I mean, I was totally into it. And I would have liked to play with Santana. I would have loved to play with some of the rock guys.
Like who?
Actually, I got called to audition for the Stones, but they ended up not hiring another keyboard player. So the position did not materialize.
Mm-hmm.
But I was ready.
Oh, that meant something. Mick
Yeah.
Jagger?
That was in 1994. So,
Wow.
yeah, that would have been great, because all my buddies, I mean, all the people who back up the Stones are all my buddies.
Okay.
The bass player, Daryl Jones, and now Steve Jordan is playing with him after Bernard Fowler, Lisa Fisher, Cindy Mizell. I know all those guys. So I was like, oh, please, I'd love to do that. That would be like, the time that I moved to New York was like 1976.
Mm-hmm.
And that was right when, in terms of music, that was like a golden age. And so, pretty much met everybody. I was born at a very fortunate time.
First of all, how long have you been in Japan?
I've been in Japan for 24 years.
24 years.
Yeah.
Do you plan on continuing to be in Japan? Or
Yes, I do.
you do?
Yeah,
You like it that much?
Yeah.
What brought you here?
I was offered a position to produce CDs for Toshiba EMI. And my wife at that time was Japanese, and she had just gotten signed to Toshiba EMI.
Mm.
And so I was getting a little tired of the road. That was my 23rd year on the road.
How old were you at this time?
41.
Okay. 40.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's when you first came to Japan. You were 41.
Yeah,
Okay. So you stayed here. You've stayed here since.
I have.
Right.
So it kind of made me a new career, because as hip hop took over the music business, it felt like the music business getting kind of yucky. I was doing sessions, getting stiffed by record companies, like not wanting to pay you. Like, these are the record companies, and I would do stuff, and it started, and then like living in the black world started changing too after the crack epidemic. Started getting a little more like dicey.
Mm-hmm.
And because all those years it was a big love fest. From 76 all the way through the 90s, it was like, hey woo, hey that's woo, yeah. And then by the mid 90s, I started feeling like a little different. None of these people really knew who I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost got into like weird situations
I understand.
on, going to like Cincinnati, Cleveland, some of these cities, and it was like, and I'd be out and about, and they'd be like, what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
It's like getting tired of the road. You know, like you be on a bus, 30 hours is nothing. 30 hours on the bus is nothing. You know, an average 12 hours on the bus. You know, you get tired of that carbon monoxide smell, you know. Sometimes there's nothing to eat, but McDonald's or, you know, or bad hotel food. You know, I'm a spoiled brat when it comes to eating. You know, I gotta have good food. And that's one reason why I love it here. The food, you'll never pretty much eat bad food. Yeah, so I love Japan. I love the lifestyle.
That leads me to my final question when I come to at the end. We are going to do some more podcasts though. I know I can get in even deeper with what we have to talk about because I know you have stories behind every gig you've had basically and all the people you've dealt with. It's quite vast. I like to ask people this at the end of their podcast. What do you consider to be a good life in Japan?
I think I don't really need to be like extravagant or really wealthy. I think that sometimes that having too much money can be can bring on too much responsibility, and I like having a freedom to just keep it within the music, live comfortably. So that's what I like about living here is that my lifestyle is comfortable and pleasant. I have a lot of friends. I'm still active in the music business, whereas I think this city enables that because there are so many opportunities here still, and opportunities present themselves even though I'm 66. So I've gotten into teaching now and really love it. I think that will be a way for me to be active as I retire. And of course you can't retire as a musician, but there's still like, take Harumo for instance. Harumo is like a virtuoso. And a lot of the young musicians that I semi-mentor or include in my activities are 40 years younger than I. And so, you know, I can play places that people come to see me. I'm recording, writing songs. I couldn't ask for better. And, you know, I prefer living a lifestyle here than the States. So, for now. Yeah, for now. There's a lot to talk about. The balances. Yeah.
Philip, I want to thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
I want to thank all of you for watching this podcast. Make sure you press like and subscribe. And remember, it's all unknown, so continue to reach for the stars because you're too blessed to be stressed.